Welcome everyone, I'm Sharyn Holmes, and as part of Formidable Voices, I'm happy to introduce you to a new conversation format, Formidable Conversations, and I'm pleased to introduce you today to my first guest, Mimi Young. Mimi Young is a spirit communicator, a woo, shamanic, intuitive and occultist, whose work is to impart ancient and practical wisdom to those who are eager to reconnect to the unseen within their inner and outer world, so you can actively receive the support of your spirit allies, break negative patterns and celebrate your path with confidence. Welcome, Mimi. It's so wonderful to have you join me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sharyn.
We'll get started with the questions. So Formidable Conversations is a short and sharp video conversation to unpack 4 questions. So the first question I'd love to ask you, Mimi, is what is your zone of genius?
I feel that what I love doing happens to also be that area of genius or brilliance, and it is holding space, and holding space in the context of education. My background is in my formal training background is in graphic design and communication design, as well as early childhood education, particularly in Montessori and emergent style education. And one thing I've really understood from the design perspective, as well as the educator's role, is to be able to speak to the folks you're working with, and to start there, to speak their language, to put yourself in their place, wherever that place or that intersection of places may be. And when you can start there and start allowing them direct their experience, them direct their educational experience, their experiences, let's say in my context with spirits and the unseen and intuition, I just start taking a couple of steps back and a couple steps back, more. So that really what it is what I love doing and what I'm good at is centering the learner, so that I'm not the one that's centered. So the role is not for me to be on stage or for me to be highlighted as the person with the answers, but providing them the tools, foundational tools, and when they are engaging, then taking the steps back and to point it out when they are doing it, so that they feel empowered, so that they realize, oh, this is what she was talking about, but I'm doing it. And then they wind up having that access to their intuition and to the great mystery.
That person-centered approach is so important, isn't it, to supporting others to grow their confidence and to feel liberated through what they're learning and doing.
Absolutely. I feel that so much of, at least, the public school system here in Canada, it's still so teacher-centric. And maybe optically they will have a curriculum that's called a student or learner-centric curriculum, or there may be certain buzzwords that are floating around in education, but ultimately I feel that the masses, we're still indoctrinated in thinking that the answer is from an authority, and we've really allowed ourselves to be disempowered, and we have lost our belief in our sovereignty, and we've lost our belief in our own authority, and we've forgotten that the answers are actually accessible within us. So what I have found, especially in the spaces of where I work, is helping people reconnect to their intuition, reconnect to that wise ancient self that exists within, and also that coexists between the spaces of us and any other being. It is that remembrance that actually we do know something, and we can know.
I find when it comes to intuition, when someone's first undertaking that journey as well, that there are many voices that can cause confusion within, where we think something's our intuition, whereas it can be the voices of others and conditioning as well. How do you navigate that space? How do you support clients to tune into their intuition and not all of the other voices that may be adding to the din?
Yeah, one thing, you know, I'm an animist, and so those voices, I invite them to come in as beings. So I'll do that, of course, in my own life, and then I'll share stories about how me doing that has been really insightful and quite profoundly healing. So, for instance, the voice of resentment, or the voice of guilt, or the voice of anxiety, or the voice of, you know, the fear of something catastrophic, you know, that catastrophic thinking, which is fairly common, to rather than dismiss them or to suppress them through, let's say, like toxic positivity, I share with my clients, and then eventually invite them to do the same, is to invite those voices to sit with them and to hear what exactly do those voices have to say, especially when we relate with them as a form of consciousness. There's intelligence to voice, like, you know, the voice of resentment. There's a lot of intelligence, a lot to learn from the voice of catastrophic thinking. And then you start realizing that they are actually important aspects to our intuition. It's not like there's only one intuitive voice, is that there's actually a chorus, and they all play a role. And we can once again come from the place of an animist and as a student, even though we're now centering the learner and the learner is the teacher, but also realizing actually those voices inside are also the teachers too. I have found that there's a lot more inner peace that is achieved, and a lot more grace, and a lot of learning, and realizing that all of those voices are real. They're all an important part of, you know, the conversation of listening to intuition. And when we can see it as this very nuanced conversation, and perhaps at times contradicting conversation, it equips us, in my opinion, to be more resilient and more pragmatic in the world that we live in. And also it can prevent how to explain it, like, because I see this sometimes, it can prevent delusional spiritual practices, or even like bypassing spiritual practices.
You used the phrase before, catastrophic thinking.
Yeah.
When I heard that phrase, I was thinking, why haven't I heard that before? You know, it's not something that I've heard before, but when I think about it in the context of how I've phrased it, I think about disaster complexing. It's just like this, you know, it's like people talk about, you know, having imposter syndrome. I think about disaster complexing as being like, it's complex because there are so many layers to the catastrophic thinking, or you know, thinking about what's the worst that could happen. And none of that has to be stuff that's actually ever going to happen, but it's just the way that our thoughts those thoughts end up growing, and how they can have an impact on whether we are tapping into our intuition and maturing and growing that instead of, well, growing that instead of being stuck and being stuck with conditioning and perhaps when I say conditioning, I mean voices of other people who are telling us that what we're doing is wrong, or that we should be doing things another way. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel that when you sit with those voices, and you sit, you know, more than once, there's no easy button or magic button that poof, you know, you do one sit and everything's fixed or changed. But if it becomes a bit of a practice where you can sit and hold enough space where those voices, perhaps those inherited voices or those internalized conditioned voices, can sit, because they are still representing a reality that exists within us, but also the reality that exists in the outer world, maybe societal reality, and yet also make room for hope and imagination and miracles. And by miracles, I just mean anything that is a step away from the default that we have. So what is a miracle for me may not actually be a miracle for someone else. But I feel if we can have enough space for all that and not dismiss those hopeful, miraculous, imaginative spaces, then you realize that actually none of it is real and all of it is real at the same time. And I feel that having more of that bandwidth, that capacity where it's not just the inherited heavy stuff, but also some of the light, playful stuff, it could really reactivate and restore us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really playing with the idea at the moment of reprioritizing joy. I think sometimes we don't,
Totally.
you know, with all the rush of what needs to be done and what's taking us over, taking our thoughts and feelings over, just to that pause that we need to just go, what do I really need right now? How can I reprioritize what's important? And in some instances, a lot of the time, it's putting ourselves first. And that doesn't mean being selfish. That just means reconnecting with ourselves in the way that you speak and teach about. A lot of people enter, I think, the spiritual space because they are trying to find not only answers, but they're trying to find themselves again as well. And your work helps people at many levels, obviously, not just the person-centered approach, but seeking support from spirit, you know, the cosmic aspects, to break, as you say on your website, you know, to break these patterns, to break this conditioning, and to really see what's true and what's truth to us. And I find that truth is such an aspect of my exploration of intuition, because when I think about a thought that I have, any thought, I have to ask further questions. And my work is always a lot about asking questions. It seems maybe too many questions at times, because that's overwhelming, not just as a questioner, but for anyone who might be interested in maybe pondering and answering those questions. But just, where is this thought coming from? Do I really believe that? And sometimes what we believe to be true is not necessarily our truth. It's because of the conditioning and the bias and the beliefs and the behaviors that we have been conditioned to enact upon or to become. And I guess moving to the next question, for Formidable Conversations, when it comes to your work and what you do, what are the changes you'd like to see in the world? And how are you showing up to make a difference, I guess, in your work for yourself, but also with your client experience?
I would love to see spirituality move outside of the zone of spirituality. I feel that, at least this is what I see, is that when people talk about spirituality, they see it still as very modality driven. Like, you know, I practice my Reiki, or I do my meditation, or, you know, I pull out my tarot cards. But the fact is, everything has the capacity to tap into the mystery. Everything potentially could invite what we call the paranormal, but in fact, it's actually very normal. And, you know, why can't cooking be deeply spiritual? Why can't commuting to work be deeply spiritual? Why can't going, you know, over to someone's home to watch a game? Like, all those things in theory could be deeply metaphysical, and yet we don't see it that way. So part of my work is, and, you know, there are offerings that I can't quite announce just yet, because they're in the process of, but I'm wanting to really challenge people by stepping out of those boundaries or those modalities. And I think by challenging people and by also demonstrating it in my own life and talking about it to folks, you know, via my writing or on social or whatever, is that the divine and the sacred is found everywhere. And the ability to listen to those spirit beings, whether it's your ancestors or a land spirit that you're devoted to, or whoever, they're found everywhere. They're found, like, sometimes I hear them the loudest when I'm taking my compost bin to the compost outside, like compost from the kitchen, like my little bucket of compost, to the one, and like that's that's a daily thing. You know, I take out, like, that's considered quote unquote garbage, and yet, and very mundane and totally not spiritual at all. And that's sometimes, it's those instances when I'm doing that, or I'm, you know, washing the dishes, that's when I hear those voices the most. And I feel that because we live in a culture where everything is so divided and fragmented, and placed in categories, placed in buckets. And there's a real disconnection. There's an immense severance of magic. And magic, the way I define it, at least the one way I define it, I have multiple definitions for magic, is the continuity of things, visible and invisible. That really, in some ways, is an expression of magic. But when we continue to say, well, this thing is spiritual, and now I'm getting on the bus, so that's not spiritual anymore. But it's like we're cutting ties to that continuity. We're severing our connection to magic.
I am so glad you brought up a number of really important things in answering that question. One, the modalities thing. It's like, okay, I'm doing Reiki, I'm spiritual now. Like I'm doing my spiritual thing now. I'm unrolling a yoga mat. I'm going to a sacred circle. But like you, I also believe that there is no separation between the divine, the sacred, and the spiritual. Every act can be a spiritual or sacred. If you don't see the difference between the words spiritual and sacred, every act can be sacred. And I think about magic every day, because I do magic every day. And you mentioned your compost, and it's like, well, it might not seem spiritual, it might seem mundane, but what are you doing with that compost? You are nurturing, you know, your soil. You are nurturing the plants that you have. So when we're nurturing the earth, that is a sacred act. And I notice too, I sometimes think, and I've thought over time, oh, I haven't done anything spiritual today. I haven't picked a tarot card. I haven't picked an oracle card. I haven't lit a candle. I haven't done a ritual. I haven't, you know, made a potion. But that's not they're not necessarily spiritual or sacred acts if they become, and if they merge with what you believe is sacred. Because if you view everything as connected, everything can be a spiritual, sacred act. And so even when you're stirring your tea, there's herbs in there, there's plant matter in there. I think about that when I'm cooking, you know, what herbs am I using? You know, I don't always think about herbs as what are the health benefits of this herb. I think, what are the magical properties of this herb when I put it into my cooking, or when I decide to make a mess of my bathtub and put flowers and herbs in there. You know, I'm not thinking about, oh, I'm having spiritual time now, or I'm holding space, so that's spiritual time. Everything, you know, every consideration, every action, every inaction, you know, to me, there is no division with what is sacred. But the way that we have been conditioned to be in this world, when we, you know, the disconnection from spirit, the disconnection from sacred, the disconnection from the earth, the disconnection from each other when we see differences, or the denial of differences because we're not truly seeing each other. I truly believe that this reconnection, you know, the work that you're doing, like integrating and supporting people at all levels, not just like, hey, do this one spiritual practice and, you know, this modality because you've taught it, trained in it, been certified in it, makes you spiritual. It doesn't. What are the other spiritual sacred things you're doing every day would be my question. If someone thinks, oh, you know, I'm doing this thing that makes it a spiritual act, what are you doing the rest of the time?
Totally. I want to add a little bit more to what
please
what you were saying. I think it's actually a really political thing to understand that the spiritual is all interconnected and there's no start or like start and end to it. And I say this because there's a price tag to, going to yoga. There's a price tag to owning tarot cards. There's a price tag to receiving a Reiki treatment. But there is no price tag to presence, gratitude, intention. Those things come free.
Yes.
So unfortunately, the new age spirituality market is very commodity driven, and there's price tags because it's commodity. And so, and it's fed us that these experiences and these points of connection are only available to the chosen few, right? And it's like you're super woke if you can be part of this. And there's very little businesses out there in the spiritual space that offer scholarships and sliding scale and all these sorts of things. And like I run a business, so obviously I need to generate income to be able to pay my bills, but I also offer those things. And I'm not saying I'm not coming from a place, I hope I'm not coming from a place of self-righteousness, but I do believe inclusion is important. I do believe being able to grant as much accessibility as possible is important, because of the fact that it shouldn't be gatekept. The sacred should not be gatekept or over commodified. I just think those are important pieces. And so and I have a lot of resources, whether if it's on my Substack or through my IG or my monthly newsletter, where like I'm providing free information where folks, even if they never enroll in one course or book one reading with me or whatever, they can be reminded of their agency to connect with sacred and their own, that they can remember that they themselves are sacred. I feel that all those things are highly political points because of, when we talk about, the economics and the accessibility of this zone, so to speak, which really is not a zone at all, that we call spirituality.
I agree. There is a lack of accessibility and there is a lack of inclusion in spirituality because of the way it's been commodified, as you say, and the way it's been whitewashed. And I guess the purpose of Formidable Conversations is to introduce people to other melanated humans who are doing brilliant work. And that's why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because of the work that you're doing and all of the brilliance that you bring, and all of the insights you bring in. And we still have a few more questions, but I really want to thank you for what you've shared so far. And the next question, and I think based on what you've spoken about just now, the next question is, what are you passionate about?
Well, there's certainly that. The inclusion piece is certainly something I feel and care about deeply. And then, so that's, I guess it depends on how you are phrased, or how do I interpret the question of what am I passionate about, as in like the totality. I feel like integrity is something I strongly believe is the essence to everything in life. If we cannot be in integrity, we cannot really be fulfilling our life purpose. So there's that piece, and integrity shows up in many different ways, big and small. And I would say integrity especially needs to be examined in those quiet, secret moments where no one is watching, where it's easy to cut corners and justify and such. But in addition to that, what I'm really passionate about, especially lately, I feel that it's been a big theme since last winter, and now we're now in spring I'm in the northern hemisphere, and for you in the fall. But so the past several months and you mentioned this earlier, is the reprioritization. So this is what I feel really passionate about right now, is the reprioritization of joy in me, particularly through play, just through fun. And I feel that in, once again, the spirituality space, it's still sort of seen and perceived and promoted as a like no pain, no gain sort of story. It's kind of like that workout paradigm in the 80s where it's like, if you're
Mm.
not like shredding your muscles to bits, you are not taking care of your body, right? Like it's like, and I actually believe that, yeah, you like some of the work, some of the deep healing is going to bring up difficult, uncomfortable parts of you.
Yes.
And that's important. And I'm not promoting a bypassing of that. Because I have a lot of criticism around spiritual bypassing, obviously, and you know, the kind of relating to inclusion and all that too. But part of it is also the need to rest, the need to calm our nervous systems and find helpful, reliable, accessible tools to soothe our physical body, our auric body, to navigate our dreams, particularly troubling dreams or chaotic dreams, and make meaning of it. And also to reintroduce play as part of our soul's identity. You know, when I ask my clients in a lot of the remote shamanic reading work, and sometimes, so just for context, my readings, I actually go spirit travel ahead of time. So when a client books, they type in their request or their question. And so before the call, I spend a considerable amount of time spirit traveling and exploring that question and receiving answers from the spirits, and then I write it all down. And then when the client and I both hop on the video call, I share everything. And sometimes there may be space, and it may be, and it always, of course, has to be relevant to the situation, where I might lead them into a somatic exercise while on the video call, where they can release an energy that really needs to be released, or perhaps, you know, call upon a shift. And one thing that I notice again and again with clients is when they experience those shifts, they said, I didn't know that being me could be so fun. And I mean, what a simple thing to say. And yet sometimes it brings me to tears when I hear that from clients. It's like they've forgotten that the default of a human being should feel joyous. And you can only enter into that when you feel supremely safe. When we feel threatened or on a high alert, you know, all the cylinders are firing and we're in that, you know, that beta brainwave state, that fight or flight, or freeze or fawn, because we know that there's like actually those 4 responses to trigger and trauma and such, is actually when we return to rest, it's actually deeply enjoyable. And yeah, fun is a quality of that. So that's what I'm really passionate about. And you know, more and more of my work is centering that. Yes, I'm still holding space for all that shadow work and like that kind of the darker, heavier stuff, because it is really important to be able to go there with assistance and with a support. And that's really what I love doing. But I also love facilitating fun and facilitating that reminder of, yeah, like it's okay to relax. It's safe to rest. It is, and to tap into creativity and tap into expression. And I think globally we're really exhausted. We haven't been able to experience fun for a long time. And fun is also spiritual.
Yes, absolutely. I have found over the years that part of my tapping into joy and creativity, as well as rest, is to paint, you know.
Yeah.
And I also, one question that I often ask myself is, and I ask this question of myself just because of what I've observed of other adults over the years. And that question is, what brought you joy as a child? And maybe it could be not paying bills, but that's not going to provide you with an activity. So my question is, what brought you joy as a child? And what are those childlike things that you have denied yourself because you're an adult now and you shouldn't do certain things? And And even though this conversation series is more about my beautiful guests like you, Mimi, I do want to share something about this. And
please do.
In terms of things that I like, things that I do today that my, you know, little child self, so my under 10 years of age self enjoyed: craft, painting, drawing, doodling, stickering. You know, so when I say
stickering's so great. I love it.
Collection. I have a sticker collection today. It's way better than the sticker collection I had as a kid, but I'm still doing it. And I'm 45 years old, and I have, you know, I have stickers and I collect them. I have many collections, which people will learn about over time. But it's just that joy, that happiness. I open the envelope that I receive in the mail and there's stickers, and it's just like, whoa, hello, 7-year-old self, there you are, you know, and just that presence and that pause and that, oh, she's still there, that connection.
Exactly. She's still there.
And so I've just noticed that people don't, as adults, take the time for fun, or they say goodbye to childish and childhood things. And I have welcomed and said hello, come back, time and time again over my life, because of trauma, because I also don't care if people think I'm being childish, but because that joy, the rush that comes from participating in those childhood things as an adult is so important to reconnect to ourselves, to have some sense of joy and to remember what it was like before things maybe got hard. And so I will still go on the swings. If we walk the dog and there's a swing, and I will go on the swings. And I'll go on the swings for as long as I can go on the swings. I remember going to a market when my family and I visited Sydney a few years ago, and there were adults sitting all near this play gym thing that was, the markets were in a school ground, like a public primary school ground. And there's this like spinning thing, like you stand on it and you spin around. I went on it anyway. Even though there were all these other adults there with very small children, I was just like, well, this is what I feel like doing now. And I think that might be a lesson for others, that you don't have to do or not do because other people are doing it or not doing it. But if you feel like doing it and it's not going to hurt anyone, but it's going to bring you joy, then do that thing. You know, go on the slide, go on the swing, go on the spinning thing. Just don't vomit on anyone.
Right. Totally. I love that. I love going on swings. And it helps when you have kids, right? Like it's...
Yeah. I mean, it might be a bit different if I didn't have a kid, but yeah. Although the last time we went past a swing, I was the only one that went on it. So.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. I love it. I love it so much. Oh, and I can't wait to keep in touch, because now that I know that you like stickers, I'm just like so psyched about it.
Oh yeah, well, we'll have to do a sticker swap or something.
Yeah. So we can be like pen pals, but like just you know, instead of like writing, it'll be like little stickers. But
yeah, well, I loved having pen pals. You know, in the age
same.
Of
so that's so fun.
We're the generation of those who had pen pals. Yeah. I haven't had a pen pal for 25 years, so I still had pen pals at age 20. So
oh wow, I think I had a pen pal until like I think by the time I graduated high school, it sort of wrapped up. But yeah, no, and it was so fun, so fun.
Yeah,
just discovering things about other people and realizing everybody's actually deep down needing the same things.
Yeah, and receiving things in the mail that are not bills.
Oh. Yes, and oftentimes my pen pal and I, we would decorate our, you know, we would draw on our envelopes, so they were really fun, including the inner flap.
Yes, yeah.
So it was just this beautiful, gorgeous piece of art that I would never throw away. You know, it'd be pinned on my bulletin board for forever.
Yeah, I know. I just hope that our conversation has helped people remember some of the joys. Childhood things.
Childish things, yeah. I mean, I'll share a quick one that I still do and I love doing. And I stopped for a little while. And then one day I started doing it and I was like, why did I ever stop doing this? It's so fun. Is, you know, if you're on a walk and then you happen to walk past some green space where the grass is no longer grass, but is clover, I just stop and I look for a 4-leaf clover. And it's so fun. I don't know why. It's extra fun when you find a 4-leaf clover. But even if I don't find a 4-leaf clover, it's still very enjoyable.
Yeah. And that presence, that moment, you just took a pause.
Yeah. Yeah.
And went seeking. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you're on this quest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a mini quest. And
yeah.
I guess that's the thing, you know, because we're in an online space and there's always a lot about hustle and commodifying and you know, self-care, but you know, self-care at a particular
with a price tag, yeah,
with a price tag.
Yeah.
It's like, here are moments that you can find joy and presence and yourself and reconnect to yourself without paying a cent. And
totally.
Just what does that feel like when you can just look for a 4-leaf clover or go for a spin on, you know, the little twisty spin thing that I mentioned before, or if you go on the swings, like, you know, that's a feeling that no business act online is going to give you. You're not going to get that feeling. You know, these are these tapping into this childlike, childhood, childish potentially things are things that there is no alternative. You know, there's nothing else that you can get that's going to make you feel that kind of joy, you know.
Exactly. And you know, I feel that if you were to really boil down what the definition of wealth is to not have to worry about money. It's not like a number, right? Like, it's not like, is it 500,000? Is it 1 million? Is it 2 million? Is it a billion? Is it like a gazillion? Whatever. Because we see that the richer someone is, they actually, it's like their appetite just keeps on growing. Like, it's not like they're satisfied at, you know, 1 billion. They want more. And when I am looking for a 4-leaf clover, I am not thinking about my bills. I am not thinking about what I have to do tomorrow or my next meeting or whatever. I am really just thinking about, I'm going to find a 4-leaf clover. And you're just looking and you're enjoying and you're very embodied in that process. I feel wealthy. That is the definition of wealth, because I'm not worrying about all those things.
Yeah. And I love to because, you know, once we've done that, it's a memory, and we have this bank of memories we can go back to. Remember that time.
Yeah.
That time on the swings, that time on the slide, that time looking for 4-leaf clovers. Like, and we can find that, you know, even if we are in the throes of work or stress or trying to make money, we can still recall those memories and relive that joy again. Or it can be a reminder to us to get the hell out of there and go and do that thing that reconnects
exactly
us to joy.
Yes Yeah, it can be a beckoning to do that again.
Yeah. And sometimes we realize just how long it's been, and that we mustn't leave it so long to reconnect to ourselves in that way.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Last question for you today, Mimi. What project are you working on right now, and where can people find you to connect?
Yeah, I'm actually going to share where people can find me first. So my request is to get on my mailing list. I feel like I used to always say, this is my Instagram handle, which of course folks are still welcome. So Instagram is shop Ceremonie. Ceremonie is the name of my brand, and it's spelled Ceremonie. So it's spelled with an IE rather than a Y. So you can find me on IG, but chances are the algorithm will eventually change it so you don't see me on IG anymore. That's been my experience. So I would love it if you wanted to connect via my mailing list. If you go onto my website, shopceremonie.com, and just on the announcement bar on the top, you can just click sign up for a newsletter, and I will send you roughly 1 newsletter a month. Maybe on occasion, and literally be a blue moon, you might get 2, but I will not overfill your inbox. And I make the newsletters really beautiful, and there's always interesting content and perks and all those sorts of things. And this relates to the project I'm working on, because I can't tell you much, but I will say a few things. It's going to feel really fun. It's going to feel really warm and inviting. It's going to be absolutely delicious, literally delicious. I think that's a bit of a hint. And for folks who have been on my IG, particularly my stories, you'll be seeing that I've been posting a lot of delicious looking things. So that's kind of where I'm going to be stepping into. I'm still going to be offering a lot of courses, and most of the courses this particular year are going to be really centered around rest, energy management, particularly energy management of our psychic abilities, just like how do you turn it off when you don't want that stuff to come in anymore, kind of stuff, or how do you manage it, and other rest and body based practices that relate with the unseen. So all those courses are available, and I list it on my website. But the project that I'm working on right now that is really tied to that passion, that fun piece, and also to a certain degree that zone of brilliance of holding space. I'm going to be announcing that as a teaser in May's newsletter, and then formally launching it for June. So I don't really have much more to say about that, but I'm very, very excited, and it's the thing that's actually making me like leap out of bed, not just get out of bed, but like leap out of bed, because it is intersecting something that I've always loved doing, food, with spirituality. So
Wow.
that's all I can say for now.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm intrigued and I'm excited to find out what it is once
Mm-hmm.
all of the pieces fall into place for you. Well, thank you so much today for your time, Mimi, and I hope everyone who's listening enjoyed this conversation, the first in the series for Formidable Conversations. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening and watching.